Hi guys, welcome to another episode of workups bi-weekly webinars. Today we're going to talk about a little something different than
Hi guys,
than we
welcome
normally
to
do.
another.
So let's just get started. Today we're going to be talking about how to implement project management procedures and techniques into a startup. So most people think that these two don't really go hand in hand because entrepreneurship and things like processes and techniques to get activities going don't really mix well because entrepreneurship is about flexibility and adaptability to the growing changes of a startup. But I'm here to show you that not necessarily this is true, because through the processes and through the techniques can you help your startup grow, because there is flexibility in project management. It doesn't have to be as rigid as most people might think it is. So one way of bringing this flexibility and bringing this adaptability into a startup is obviously having the right tools and techniques of project management to get it going. So the reason why we chose this topic today was because a couple of weeks ago as part of um, our monthly giveaways, we gave away a couple of free licenses to a couple startups here in where I am right now in Puerto Rico. So they got started using it, and we gave a couple of workshops to them, and it's worked incredibly well. So what I wanted to do for you guys today was kind of show you an example of how one of the startups here, Ogma Languages, a startup here in Puerto Rico, how they've used workup and how it has helped them get their business moving and helping them grow. And part of the reason this is important is because we we understand that there is a need and there is a benefit and a value to adding these techniques and these processes to a startup, because it helps you basically just control your growth. It helps you project so what's going to happen in a couple of months if you have a solid base of procedures that can be flexible and adaptable during the next couple of months. So let's just get started. I want to show you how this startup here in Puerto Rico has been using workup to get project management into their startup. So before I met them, they were like, no, we don't really use any project management techniques within our startup. We don't really think it'll work, but we've worked together and we've created this amazing setup for them. So what they've done with their startup and workup is basically just break it down. So the number one rule, or just the most important thing about project management, is that you need to break things down, because if you keep things simple, you may overlook a bunch of details and a bunch of stuff that are super important for your business. So for your business and for your project, and each of those breakdowns and each of those activities that you're breaking down have a cost, have a time, have a value that you need to take into consideration if you want to maintain a certain control over what's happening and what needs to happen in the future for your business and for your projects. So basically, what they did was this whole breakdown of important things within their company. So obviously, the first one is business development. Obviously, they have clients. They've broken down the clients into just invoice status, contracts, finances, interviews, KPIs, meetings, just the works. Everything that consists of their startup, they've broken it down and they've made it really interesting within workup. So before I go into in depth of how they've done this, basically the important thing to know about this tool or workup in general is that it's divided into 5 levels, which actually is very beneficial for startups, because usually startups don't have projects that are complicated or complex. They usually have teams of around 10 people, um, give or take, making these projects pretty easy and manageable to work with, allowing this breakdown to actually occur in much more tangible and easier to manage elements or variables. So I personally think that workup works amazing for startups because of this, because they don't really have complex projects. Instead, they have just little ones that are easily managed. So that's basically what we did with Ogma Language Studio. What we did was we sat down and we started going, okay, so what are the important levels of your company? And then each of those levels, the first level, which is at project level, we then broke it down even more into sub levels, which would be the sections here in workup. And then within those sections, we broke them down even more into tasks. And then within those tasks, we broke them down even more into subtasks. Now, keep in mind that this is very basic project management. It's very it's not as specific or as detailed as other project management techniques tend to be, especially when it comes to the subtasks. So workup allows you to create subtasks, but it won't allow you to give a due date to the subtask, which is a blessing and a curse. If you have a project that is complex, and that if you have a business that is, more than 100 employees, then this might become a bit of a difficulty for you. But if you're a startup, this is actually a benefit, because you don't want to be assigning deadlines to subtasks. That does not interest you. That does not interest you, because you need flexibility. You need to be able to have a project management tool that will allow you to make quick changes, add sections if you need to add them, have tasks if you need. If you have a if you have a task that has an end date, but you want to change it, it's easily changeable. So this is what I mean about how workup mixes perfectly the flexibility that project management should have within a startup. So it doesn't make things so rigid that you can't modify or adapt yourself to the circumstances that may arrive within a startup and the entrepreneur life and all the changes that come with that. So yeah. So basically, that's one of the most important aspects to keep in mind. To keep things simple, you don't want to keep things complicated. Notice that Ogma language doesn't really have any due dates assigned to too much of their tasks, because they want to keep this whole idea of flexibility within their grasp, and they know that they're a growing business, and they know that they just get started. So adding dates might be a little bit unrealistic, because they have this type of project in their hands that is very much lost in the fog. They've never been in this circumstance. They've never had this experience. So they're taking things day by day, but still taking into consideration that they at least know that these are the tasks that need to be done during the year to get the clients going. These are my clients. This is what I need. So this is what I wanted to show you. I think this is one of the best examples I can give you about how some of our startups are using workup. So obviously, there's going to be certain projects that definitely need end dates, that definitely need to have a little bit more structure. But this is again where workup allows you to have that flexibility. For example, let's see if they have around here. They have a couple of due dates here. So the important thing is that once you do have those due dates, we'll also be able to give you a full Gantt chart of everything that is coming up within your schedule, and this allows you to get organized in a much more efficient way. So let's see how a full Gantt chart would look. Workup in itself, we've been around for around 4 years, so we know all about the startup phase. We know all about it. Actually, the reason why Workup was created was specifically to help growing businesses tackle their projects with a tool that made things a little bit easier for them, but also allowed them to keep track of their tasks and keep track of all the activities that needed to be done. So within Workup itself, we also do this breakdown. We also do this breakdown of activities. So I've just showed you how a startup like Ogma Language, which is a startup that is very, very new, it's very much lost in the fog. They don't really have dates assigned to on any of their tasks, or so they've maintained this like flexibility. Now, how does workup within a startup look when it's a lot more structured, when we have dates, when we've decided, okay, this is what we need, because we've already been in this business for some time now. We're still in the startup phase, but we kind of know, we're kind of a little bit more structured, we kind of know where we're going. So this is where the dates and the full-on activity breakdown comes into play. So I want to show you basically how I've managed everything within ourselves, within workup, because I think it's useful for our users to basically know how we here at workup like to do things. So the way that I structured our workup here within the team, within the customer service team and the sales team, is that I basically broke down all of the activities that needed to be done within workup into levels. Now this is super, super important, because earlier I mentioned that workup has 5 levels. So we have the project level, we have the team level, we have the task level, we have the section level, and then we have the subtasks. So we have different levels, and within those levels, identifying them is very, 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 very important, because this is where this really helps startups hit the ground running with project management, because it doesn't have to be complicated. All these procedures and these techniques don't really have to be complicated. They're actually quite basic. They're actually things that everybody should be doing when they're planning their projects. Just when you're planning your day, this is everything that goes on in your head. This is everything that goes on within our team in a sheet, in a Google sheet. So basically, I just want to show you what I did. So I identified the levels, like I mentioned earlier. We have the team level, number 1. We have the project level, number 2. We have within a project, we have sections, which is level 3. Within the sections, we have tasks, which is level 4. And then finally, our subtasks are level 5. Now, why do I emphasize these levels? Because it makes things a lot easier for you guys, our users, to get things going within workup and to implement your projects, especially if you don't really have complicated projects, especially if you have, simple projects. This can be dangerous, having simple projects, because you oversimplify things. You just simply create a project, create some sections, create some tasks, and that's it. So no, that's not the best strategy to tackle your projects within workup. The best strategy is this. You've identified the 5 levels. You create a little sheet within Google Sheets that's attached to your workup, of course. And then you start identifying, you start breaking down all the work. So you start going, okay, so this level number 1, this level right here is the team, but this level right here would be what the project would be within workup. So notice number 1 here. So each of my whole numbers within my Google Sheets will be a new project within workup. Now this allows me, so I do this before I do any work within workup, because usually when our users start creating projects and start creating tasks, they will overlook a bunch of activities, and they will overlook a lot of things that need to be done. And then once the project gets started, they'll be like, oh no, I forgot to add this task, and then it'll overrun with another task. So I always suggest, always break down the work that needs to be done. You can either do it like this with a Google Sheet. It's a bit more complicated like this because it's a lot more, technical. But you can even do it with sticky notes on your wall. You can do it, a chalkboard or a magic marker board, whatever you want, however you see it. The important thing is to break down the work. Now, all the work that is being broken down needs to be identified within numbers that can be measured, of course, because that's basically the whole point of this. This is how we maintain control. If we know that a task has a duration of an hour, if we know it takes me an hour a week to update my sales performance metrics, then I know exactly how much it costs the company for me to do this. So this is very important, because then I know what I need to prioritize within my workup. Then I know, okay, so these tasks are 1 hour. I can get them done. I can get them sorted easily. Or these tasks are 6 hours, so I need to invest more time. So the important thing with that is always identify them. Like I said, either sticky notes or whatever, or in your Google Sheets, however you want to do it, just break down the work. Now notice that, again, whole numbers are projects, and then when we break it down into decimal points, the first decimal point would be a section, second decimal point would be tasks themselves, and then so on and so forth with the subtasks. Now I know this looks a bit scary and a bit daunting. I'm sure not a lot of people think about it this way, but I guarantee you this technique will help, because once you've like spit all of the information out of your brain, all of the activities, when you've broken them down, and you've broken down into tangible activities, into things that you know, okay, so how do I update my sales performance metrics? Okay, I need to identify patterns, I need to identify user churn, all of this good stuff. Once all of that is identified, then I know exactly how long it will take me to create or get this activity executed. Now I know this may not sound as flexible as it should be as activities should be within startups, but not exactly. I think this is pretty flexible, because just because you write it down and just because you set certain restrictions to a task, it doesn't mean it can't change within the future. Obviously, the core and the base shouldn't change, because these are, no matter the circumstances, no matter what happens, this is what you need to get done to get this task going. So what can change and what can be flexible is the amount of time you invest in it. If Because startups are growing businesses, and because they change so constantly, and because you don't really know what you're doing at first, it just pretty much comes together as you go along. This basically allows you to create that structure. This allows you, once you create routines and once you create activities that are repetitive, this allows you to identify, okay, so this activity that we need to do every month, every week, we've we've measured exactly how long it takes us. So now moving forward, we know how long it'll take us to get all of these things sorted. So this will help us in the future, because now we know that when we plan a new project, we know exactly how long each of these activities are going to take me. And once I know how long each of those activities will take me, then I can then assign a budget to each of those activities and each of those tasks. So I'll have a clearer perspective of how much is going to be invested in this project and how much is going to be the return or the outcome of it. So the important thing here is that always break down the work. Now obviously this is very simplified. In complex projects it tends to be a lot more, broken down into much more complicated levels. We also have dependencies within complex projects. You can have dependencies within, your simple projects within workup, but at the same time, dependencies really don't add that flexibility that startups need, because once you add a dependency, you know that you can't get task B started without task A, and that tends to be very frustrating when you're looking at your Gantt chart and then you go, okay, so I need to get this task sorted before I get this task sorted. But because startups tend to be so volatile and you don't really know what's going to happen one day, these dependencies can get a little bit frustrating, because you won't be able to get this task completed for X or Y reason, and then you'll be behind with this one. So dependencies are a bit daunting, very useful when you have structure. Once you've overcome the learning curve, and once your startup has already been in the game for some time now, and you've identified all these important things and how much every activity takes you, then these dependencies really help. Then these dependencies are really useful. They help us keep track of how to get the momentum going as well, because the dependencies are based on this like waterfall method, in which like once we get task A started Once we get task A started, we can go with task B, and then we can go with task C, and so on and so forth. So it'll be like a waterfall breakdown that kind of comes together. So this is, again, very useful when once you have a project that is much more defined and a lot more useful. So yeah, so basically that's what I wanted to talk about with regards to the breakdown of your project plan. Always keep in mind that everything that you do within your Google Drive will work simultaneously with your workup. Everything will be saved within workup. And so yeah, so another major benefit with workup and startups is this whole integration with G Suite, because it keeps things simple as well. G Suite is, it's very intuitive, it's very easy. You have this whole integration here with the Google Calendar, with your Gmail, with all the docs. And then obviously when you have smaller teams, managing documents and managing your Google Drive tends to be a lot better and a lot easier, and a lot more manageable, of course. So I personally think that this whole integration with G Suite really has helped our startups get their projects going and flowing. So that's basically what I wanted to show you. Want to show you as well that with um, again with this startup setup with workup, what our teams within our little program that we did this month, giving free licenses to startups to help them to encourage growth within our community. So they've really taken this setup very seriously, and it has helped them, get all their projects sorted. They've created teams. Even though these startups only have a couple of people within their teams, they've broken things down so much that they've created different teams. Each team has their purpose. Each team with a variety of different activities. We have a marketing team. We have the startup as itself is a team. And the reason why the startup itself is a team is because, obviously your startup is a project, because a project is anything that a unique endeavor that brings people together to reach a common goal. That's basically what a project is. So your startup is a project, and it should be treated as such, and it should be treated with the same techniques and the same procedures. Obviously, keeping in mind this whole flexibility, and obviously keeping in mind that things will change and things will be a lot more difficult for startups that it will be for a project that is a lot more structured, that has a lot more consistency. But just because your startup can't provide you that consistency does not mean that you can't apply project management procedures to at least maintain a certain outlook, or at least make some projections of what will happen in the future. So even though you might be lost in the fog, you can still have like a little light that'll help you kind of guide your way through the fog. And I think that that's basically what the importance of project management is for these types of companies. And obviously tools that allow you to get that light working, and to keep that light going, and to just keep the momentum going. And that's kind of where workup comes into play. So that's basically all I wanted to talk about in depth. I really want to hear what you guys have to say. If you have any specific questions, you can ask me through the little chat, and I'll be more than happy to answer your questions. So Daniel has just asked me how to copy projects between teams. Now, unfortunately, you can't copy projects between teams. However, workup is creating a new feature called project sharing, which will allow you to basically do this, not necessarily create copies, but share projects between teams. This will be available sometime in June, I think it is. So yeah, so we will get that sorted. So if there are no more questions, I will leave my email within the chat so that you can contact me if you have any questions, doubts, comments, suggestions, or anything related to startups and project management. I'll be more than happy to help. Um, so have an excellent day. We have another question. So sharing projects within teams, like I said, will be available by the end of June. And that will basically just work. It'll be just like a feature where you just tell the project, I want to share this project with team, with the sales team, with the IT team, and then it'll appear within the IT team as well. But you will have both team members working within the same project, and both teams will have access to that project. I hope that answers your question. Great. So have a great rest of the day, you guys, and we'll hope to see you in the next webinar. Bye.